The starship Resilience shook violently as reality tore itself apart around it. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped her command chair while sparks flew from control panels across the bridge. The experimental faster-than-light drive was supposed to take them to Proxima Centauri. Instead, it was tearing a hole through the fabric of space itself. "Shut it down," Vasquez shouted over the screaming alarms. Chief Engineer Marcus Chen's hands flew over his console. "I'm trying. The containment field is collapsing. We're going to jump whether we like it or not." The universe turned inside out. For one impossible moment, Vasquez could see everything and nothing at once. Then the Resilience slammed back into normal space with a force that threw everyone against their restraints. Silence fell over the bridge. The alarms had stopped. The lights flickered, then stabilized on emergency power. "Status report," Vasquez said, pulling herself upright. Her head throbbed, but she pushed the pain aside. Chen checked his instruments, his face growing pale. "We're not at Proxima Centauri." "Where are we?" "I don't know, but we're in orbit around something." He paused, staring at his screen. "Captain, you need to see this." Vasquez moved to his station. On the display was a planet unlike any Earth telescope had ever seen. Cities glowed across its surface like jeweled networks. Massive stations hung in orbit, connected by streams of light that might have been traffic. And surrounding them were ships, hundreds of ships in designs that made no sense to human engineering. "We're not alone," whispered Lieutenant Sarah Okonkwo from the science station. "No," Vasquez agreed. "We're definitely not alone." The communication panel lit up with incoming signals. Dozens of them in languages and formats the Resilience's computers had never encountered. Chen tried to filter them, but they kept coming, overwhelming their basic translation systems. Then something else appeared on the sensors. 3 massive ships were moving toward them, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They moved with purpose, surrounding the Resilience in a triangle formation. "Should we power weapons?" asked the tactical officer. Vasquez shook her head. "We have nothing that could scratch those things. Besides, if they wanted us dead, we'd already be dust." She straightened her uniform and took a deep breath. "Open a channel. All frequencies." "Channel open, Captain." Vasquez spoke clearly, her voice steady despite the impossible situation. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Earth starship Resilience. We experienced a navigation malfunction and arrived here by accident. We mean no harm and request permission to dock for repairs. We also require medical assistance for injured crew members." Chen stared at her. "Captain, they probably can't understand us." "Maybe not, but they'll understand tone. And right now, we're not acting like victims or invaders. We're acting like professionals who need help." She turned back to the screen showing the alien vessels. "Let's see how they respond." For 3 long minutes, nothing happened. The alien ships held their positions, neither advancing nor retreating. Inside the Resilience, the crew waited, barely breathing. Then one of the ships moved closer. A new signal came through, this time with a visual component. The screen showed a being that looked like an insect had merged with a crystalline structure. Multiple eyes regarded them from a triangular head. When it spoke, the words were incomprehensible, but the computer began working, finding patterns, building a basic translation matrix. The alien spoke again, and this time, fragmented words came through the translator. Identity, confirmed, primitive, technology, protocol, unexpected, response. Vasquez smiled slightly. At least they were surprised. That was something. Maintain position, the translated voice said more clearly. Analysis, proceeding, compliance, expected. Acknowledged, Vasquez replied. Then she muted the channel and turned to her crew. Chen, get those repairs started. I don't care how you do it, but I want engines at least functional. Okonkwo, analyze everything those ships are broadcasting. I want to know who we're dealing with. Everyone else, secure the ship and tend to the wounded. We're going to get through this. How can you be so calm? Chen asked quietly. Vasquez met his eyes. Because panicking won't help. We've trained for first contact scenarios. Nobody said the contact had to happen the way we planned. She looked back at the alien ships on the screen. Besides, they're curious. If they were going to destroy us, they would have done it already. Curiosity is something we can work with. Over the next 12 hours, the Resilience became the center of attention for what appeared to be an entire galactic civilization. More ships arrived, each carrying observers and officials from species humanity had never imagined. The crew worked frantically to repair critical systems while alien scanners probed every inch of their ship. Through broken translations and visual communications, they learned they had emerged in the heart of something called the Galactic Empire. An empire that had existed for over 200,000 years. An empire of 50,000 different species. And humanity, with their barely functional ship and primitive technology, had crashed right into its capital system. Ambassador Executor. Thelnvar studied the human vessel from his observation ship. His analysis programs had been running since the moment the strange craft appeared. The results confused him. These humans had no translation technology of their own. Their faster-than-light drive was crude and had obviously malfunctioned. Their weapons were chemical-based projectiles and simple energy weapons. By every standard measure, they were a newly spacefaring species who should have been terrified. Instead, their captain had requested docking permission as if this were a routine port visit. She had calmly deployed repair crews while surrounded by Imperial warships. She had treated his authority as if they were equals negotiating standard protocols. Thelnvar had processed first contact with 87 species over his career. They all followed predictable patterns. They panicked, they surrendered, they begged, or they attacked in fear. The humans had done none of these things. He opened a private channel to his analysis team. What am I missing? Why do they show no fear? One of his researchers responded. Perhaps they do not understand the danger they are in. No, Thelnvar said slowly, watching as a human engineer spacewalked outside their ship to repair a damaged sensor array. The engineer worked efficiently, occasionally glancing at the Imperial ships but showing no sign of distress. They understand perfectly. They simply do not care. Or rather, they have decided that fear will not help them, so they have chosen competence instead. He tagged the human vessel in the Imperial database with a priority marker. Apex Predator confidence without Apex technology, he wrote in his report. Recommend extreme caution and continued observation. These beings are an anomaly that requires explanation. On the Resilience, Vasquez sat in her ready room, reviewing everything they had learned. They were alone in a galaxy full of ancient empires and technologies beyond human comprehension. They had no allies, no backup, and no way home until the FTL drive could be properly repaired. But they were alive. And as long as they were alive, they could figure out what came next. She had survived corporate wars, military actions, and political backstabbing to reach her captain's chair. She had commanded ships through asteroid fields and solar storms. This was just another problem to solve. Her door chimed. Come in, Chen entered, looking exhausted but satisfied. Engines are at 40%. FTL drive needs complete rebuilding, but I can do it given time and materials. We're space-worthy enough to move if we need to. Good work, Marcus. Get some rest, Captain. He hesitated at the door. What do you think happens next? Vasquez leaned back in her chair. I think they'll want to talk. They'll have questions, and so will we. And then we'll negotiate. That's what intelligent beings do. What if they don't see us as equals? Then we'll have to show them otherwise. She smiled slightly. We've done harder things. We survived Earth, didn't we? Everything else is just details. After Chen left, Vasquez looked out her viewport at the glowing planet below and the impossible city of lights beyond. Humanity had just stumbled into something far larger than themselves. But humanity had always been good at stumbling forward. It was practically their specialty. She activated her log recorder. Captain's log, stardate. Well, we don't know anymore. The Resilience has made first contact with an alien civilization. A very large alien civilization. We're going to need a bigger playbook. She smiled to herself as she closed the log. But first, let's see what they want. And then we'll decide what we're willing to give them. This should be interesting. The Imperial Council chamber was designed to intimidate. It stretched upward for 50 meters with galleries where thousands of representatives from different species could observe proceedings. Holographic displays showed star maps and data, streams in languages humanity had never seen. At the center sat the High Council, 12 beings representing the most powerful factions in the Empire. Captain Vasquez walked across the vast floor toward the center platform, her boots clicking against the crystalline surface. She had refused the hovering platform they offered, choosing to walk instead. Behind her came Chen and Okonkwo, both trying to match her calm confidence. "This is insane," Chen whispered. "We've been here 3 days and they're already putting us on trial." "It's not a trial," Vasquez replied quietly. "It's an evaluation. They want to see what we're made of." "Same thing," Okonkwo muttered. They reached the center platform and stopped. Above them, the 12 council members looked down. Thelnvar was among them, his crystalline insect features unreadable. The central figure, a being that looked like flowing liquid metal shaped into a humanoid form, spoke. The translation came through the devices the humans had been given. "You are the representatives of Earth, a world unknown to Imperial records. You have entered Imperial space without authorization. You possess faster-than-light technology without having passed through the proper developmental stages. Explain." Vasquez met what might have been its eyes. "Our FTL drive malfunctioned during its first test flight. We didn't intend to come here, but we're here now and we'd like to establish formal relations between Earth and your empire." A ripple went through the chamber. One of the council members, a being covered in feathers and bearing 6 wings, leaned forward. "You misunderstand. Your position, human. New species do not establish relations. They petition for provisional status. They demonstrate their worthiness over decades. They learn their place in the proper order." "With respect," Vasquez said, "we're not interested in provisional status. Earth is an independent world with its own government and its own authority. We seek mutual recognition between equals." The chamber erupted. Thousands of voices filled the space, translators struggling to keep up with the chaos. The liquid metal being raised an appendage and silence fell. "You claim equality without the technology to support it," it said. "You claim independence without understanding where you are. You are one world among 50,000. You are children who have barely left your cradle. What makes you think you deserve to be treated as equals?" Vasquez reached into her jacket and pulled out a datapad. "Because in the 3 days since we arrived, we've analyzed your communication protocols and deciphered Imperial Standard. We've mapped the basic structure of your space using our damaged sensors. We've studied your legal codes and identified 17 precedents for immediate recognition based on demonstrated diplomatic capability." She held up the pad. "And we've prepared a formal petition citing all of them." The council members looked at each other. Thelnvar's many eyes focused on Vasquez with what might have been surprise. "Impossible," said another council member. This, one reptilian with scales that shifted colors. "It takes species decades to learn Imperial Standard." "We had good motivation," Chen said from behind Vasquez. "And really good coffee." Okonkwo stepped forward, unable to contain herself. "Also, your language follows logical patterns based on mathematical relationships. Once we identified the core structure, the rest was just processing power and some educated guessing." The feathered council member bristled. "You speak of our ancient language as if it were a simple code." "All languages are codes," Okonkwo replied. "They're just codes for transmitting meaning. Yours is actually quite elegant, though it's inefficient, in the harmonic ranges." Vasquez shot Okonkwo a look that said, "Stop talking." She turned back to the council. "We're not trying to be disrespectful. We're trying to show you that we're capable of functioning at your level. We learn quickly. We adapt. These are valuable traits, are they not?" The liquid metal being studied them for a long moment. "You are either remarkably brave or remarkably foolish. Perhaps both." It gestured and a holographic document appeared in the air. "Very well. Your petition is noted. However, standard procedure requires a threat assessment. You will answer our questions. You will submit to further analysis. And if you are found to be a danger to the Empire, you will be quarantined to your system until such time as you are deemed safe. And if we refuse? Vasquez asked. Then you will be quarantined by force. Vasquez nodded slowly. We accept your terms, but we also want something in return. The chamber fell silent again. Finally, the Reptilian Council member spoke. You are in no position to make demands. We're in a perfect position, Vasquez countered. You need to understand us, and we need to understand you. So while you're analyzing us, we want access to your public databases, your trade networks, and your cultural exchanges. You learn about us, we learn about you. That's fair. Fairness, the liquid being said slowly, is not a concept that applies to situations of such extreme power imbalance. Then you don't understand fairness, Vasquez replied. Fairness isn't about equal power. It's about equal respect. You respect our right to exist and grow, and we respect your authority and experience. That seems fair to me. Thelnvar spoke for the first time, his translated voice carrying a note of curiosity. Captain Vasquez, why do you negotiate as if you have already won something? You have one damaged ship and a crew of primitives. What have you won? Vasquez smiled. We've won your attention. 3 days ago you didn't know we existed. Now you're debating our future in your highest council. That's a victory in itself. And it tells me something important about you. What does it tell you? Thelnvar asked. That you value potential over current strength. Otherwise, you would have just destroyed us or ignored us. Instead, you brought us here. You're curious, and curiosity means opportunity. She looked around at all the council members. We may be new to this stage, but we're not new to negotiation. Humans have been negotiating with each other for thousands of years. We've survived nuclear standoffs, resource wars, climate catastrophes, and our own worst instincts. A few bureaucratic proceedings don't scare us. The feathered being actually laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. She has spirit. I will grant her that. The liquid metal being seemed to flow through several shapes before settling back into its humanoid form. Very well. Humanity is granted provisional observer status. You may access public databases and participate in cultural exchanges under supervision. However, you will remain in this system until our analysis is complete. You will cooperate fully with all inquiries, and you will remember that this status can be revoked at any moment. Do you accept these terms? We do, Vasquez said. Thank you for your consideration. Do not thank me yet, the being replied. You may find that understanding us is more difficult than you imagine, and you may find that we are equally difficult to impress. This empire has stood for 200,000 years. It has seen species rise and fall. What makes you think yours will be any different? Vasquez met its gaze steadily. Because we're still here. Earth has tried to kill us in every way possible. We survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and our own stupidity. We're stubborn that way. I figure if we can survive ourselves, we can survive just about anything else. As they left the chamber, Chen let out a breath he had been holding. That was insane. Do you realize we just negotiated with beings who could destroy our entire planet, I realize, Vasquez said. I also realize they didn't destroy us. That means something. Okonkwo was reviewing her notes. Did I really tell a council member their language was inefficient? You did, Vasquez confirmed. Am I in trouble? Probably. But it was funny, so I'll let it slide this time. Behind them in the council chamber, Thelnvar reviewed the recordings of the encounter. His analysis programs had worked throughout the meeting, measuring everything from vocal patterns to micro-expressions to chemical signatures. The humans showed stress, but it was controlled stress. They showed confidence, but it was earned confidence, not blind arrogance. And most interesting of all, they showed adaptability. They had adjusted their approach 3 times during the meeting, responding to the council's reactions and finding new angles. They negotiate like they do this every day, he said to his assistant. Perhaps they do, Ambassador Executor. Their own species appears to be highly fractious. They have hundreds of different governments and cultures, all competing and cooperating simultaneously. Fascinating, Thelenvar murmured. They have been negotiating with themselves for so long that negotiating with us seems natural to them. He made a note in his report. These humans are more prepared for galactic politics than any species I have encountered. Not because they are advanced, but because they are practiced. They have turned survival into an art form. He tagged the file with a new assessment. Recommend continued observation. These beings may prove valuable to the Empire, or they may prove to be a disruption. Either way, they are worth understanding. In the quiet of her temporary quarters aboard a station, orbiting Throne Prime, Vasquez recorded a message for Earth. It would take months to reach home, but she needed to send it. To Earth Command and the United Nations. First contact has been made. We have encountered a galactic civilization far beyond our current capabilities. However, we have established preliminary diplomatic relations. We are not prisoners, and we are not in immediate danger. We are, however, very small fish in a very large pond. She paused, choosing her words carefully. My recommendation is to proceed with caution but not with fear. These beings respect competence and confidence. They value order and tradition, but they also value potential. Show them what humanity can do, not what we cannot. Show them we earned our place at their table, even if we had to break into the room to get there. She smiled slightly. Vasquez out. And good luck. We're going to need it. Trade Station Nexus 7 floated in neutral space between three major Imperial sectors. It was a massive structure, home to millions of beings from thousands of species. Markets, laboratories, entertainment districts, and diplomatic quarters all existed in careful balance. It was the perfect place for the humans to begin exploring galactic society. It was also where everything started to go sideways. Marcus Chen stood in the central shipyard, staring at a vessel that was being constructed. In one of the main bays, engineers from a species that looked like ambulatory plants directed construction robots through what appeared to be the final assembly of a cargo transport. Chen had been watching for 20 minutes, and his engineer's brain was screaming. Excuse him. Me, he called out to the nearest engineer. The plant being turned, its translation device creating words from the rustling of its leaves. Yes, human? Do you require assistance? I have a question about your engine configuration. Chen pointed at the vessel. Why are you using radial combustion chambers? That's incredibly inefficient for the fuel mixture you're running. The engineer's leaves bristled. This design has been optimal for 3,000 years. It is certified by the Imperial Engineering Council. I'm sure it is, Chen said carefully. But look at the plasma flow. You're losing at least 15% efficiency because of turbulence in the third stage. If you angled the chambers at 45 degrees and added a magnetic focusing array, you'd get much better burn. Impossible, the engineer said flatly. The design is perfect. Chen sighed and pulled out his data pad. Can I show you something? What happened next would be discussed in Imperial engineering circles for years. Chen, using principles developed from Earth's crude but effective rocket technology, redesigned the engine core in 30 minutes. He built a small-scale model using spare parts from a maintenance shop, and when they tested it, the efficiency increased by 18%. The plant engineer stared at the results in silence. Then it did something unprecedented. It requested a formal meeting with the Imperial Engineering Council to discuss primitive but effective human engineering concepts. Chen returned to the Resilience that evening to find Vasquez waiting with an expression that was half amused and half concerned. I heard you just made several thousand-year-old engineers very upset, she said. I was trying to be helpful, Chen protested. You were. That's the problem. Keep it up, but maybe be a little more diplomatic about it. Meanwhile, Dr. Sarah Okonkwo had found her way to the xenobiology wing of the station's research complex. She had been invited to observe a competition where young scientists presented their research on evolutionary patterns across different worlds. Okonkwo listened politely for 3 hours, as presenter after presenter showed careful, methodical work that followed established protocols and built incrementally on previous research. It was all very proper and very boring, When she was invited to ask questions, she couldn't help herself. Has anyone considered applying competitive pressure models to multi-species evolutionary systems? She asked. The moderator, a being that resembled a floating collection of geometric shapes, regarded her. Competitive pressure is considered a primitive survival mechanism. Advanced species evolved beyond such base instincts. But you all evolved from something, Okonkwo pressed. And on Earth, competition drove rapid adaptation. Species that competed for resources evolved faster than species in stable environments. I'm wondering if that pattern holds across other worlds. It does not, said one of the presenters, a crystalline being that chimed when it moved. We have studied thousands of worlds. Evolution is a slow, steady process of optimization. Okonkwo pulled out her datapad and displayed her own research. I've been analyzing the biological data available in your public databases. I found at least 47 worlds where evolutionary jumps correlate with resource scarcity events. I think competition is more important than your models suggest. What followed was a heated debate that lasted until station night cycle. Okonkwo defended her position using Earth's evolutionary history as evidence, while the other xenobiologists argued from their collective wisdom of centuries. In the end, a senior researcher made an announcement. Okonkwo's paper would be reviewed for publication in the Imperial Xenobiology Journal. She had essentially won the competition she hadn't officially entered. When she returned to the Resilience, she found Chen celebrating his own victory. We're, making quite an impression, Vasquez observed dryly. Is that a problem? Okonkwo asked. I don't know yet. Let's hope not. The third incident happened in the station's diplomatic quarter, where a minor dispute between two trading companies had escalated into threats of violence. The station security, not wanting an incident, had sealed the area and called for mediators. Lieutenant James Rodriguez, the Resilience's security officer, was passing through when he saw the situation developing. Two groups of aliens, one resembling large crustaceans and the other like ambulatory crystals, were facing off in the corridor. Both sides had weapons drawn. Rodriguez assessed the situation in seconds. The crustaceans were backed into a corner, which meant they would fight. The crystals had superior numbers but were hesitating, which meant they wanted to avoid casualties. Both sides were locked in a standoff that nobody knew how to exit. He walked straight into the middle of the standoff. Excuse me, he said loudly. Could you all lower your weapons? You're blocking the corridor. Both sides stared at this small human who had just walked between them. This does not concern you, primitive, one of the crustaceans growled. Maybe not, Rodriguez agreed. But you're still blocking the corridor, also you. He pointed at the crustacean leader. Your stance is all wrong. If that guy on the left rushes you, you're going to shoot your own person, and you. He turned to the crystals. Your formation is terrible. You've got 3 people covering the same angle while your right flank is completely exposed. Are you teaching us how to fight? The crystal leader asked in disbelief. I'm teaching you that you're both doing it wrong, which suggests maybe you should put the weapons away and talk instead. Rodriguez crossed his arms. I've seen bar fights on Earth with better tactics than this. Something about his calm confidence, or maybe his casual insult to both sides, broke the tension. The crustacean leader actually laughed, a clicking sound, from its mandibles. You have courage, little human. Very well. We will talk. Rodriguez helped mediate the dispute, which turned out to be about a misunderstanding in a shipping contract. Within an hour, both sides had agreed to arbitration. Station security, who had been watching the whole thing, added Rodriguez to their list of approved mediators. When he reported to Vasquez, she was shaking her head. You walked into the middle of an armed standoff. It seemed like the right thing to do, Rodriguez said. It was insane. Maybe. But it worked. Vasquez had to agree with that. Across the station, Thelnvar was receiving reports about the human activities. Each report was more surprising than the last. He reviewed the data with his analysis team. They have been here for 2 weeks, he said. In that time, they have improved our engineering, challenged our scientific understanding, and resolved a diplomatic crisis. All accidentally, They do not appear to understand that they are supposed to be observers, his assistant noted. No, Thelnvar agreed. They do not. They see a problem and immediately begin solving it. They see inefficiency and must fix it. They see conflict and must resolve it. It is as if they cannot help themselves. He pulled up the human database files they had compiled. Look at their history. Constant warfare, constant innovation, constant crisis and constant adaptation. They have spent their entire history solving impossible problems, so they see every problem as solvable. Is this dangerous? His assistant asked. Perhaps, Thelnvar said slowly. But perhaps it is exactly what the Empire needs. We have become stable, comfortable. We follow the old ways because they work, not because they are best. These humans ask why when we say because. That is uncomfortable, but it may be valuable. He made a note in his report. Recommend continued access to public facilities. The humans are disruptive, but their disruptions are productive. They challenge assumptions without challenging authority. They improve systems without demanding credit. This is rare. On the resilience, Vasquez reviewed the day's reports with her senior staff. We're making waves, Chen said. People are talking about us. Is that good or bad? Okonkwo asked. Both, Vasquez replied. We're proving we can contribute at their level, but we're also making some people uncomfortable. We need to be careful, not to push too hard. What's our plan? Rodriguez asked. Vasquez looked at the star map showing the vast expanse of the Galactic Empire. We keep doing what we're doing. We prove we belong here. We show them that humanity isn't just another primitive species waiting to be uplifted. We're partners who bring something new to the table. And what do we bring? Chen asked. Perspective, Vasquez said. They've been doing things the same way for thousands of years. Sometimes you need fresh eyes to see old problems. That's what we offer. Fresh eyes and a stubborn refusal to accept that something can't be done. She smiled at her crew. Besides, we're good at being underestimated. We've had practice. In the weeks that followed, the human presence on Nexus 7 became a regular feature of station life. Chen started informal engineering seminars that drew surprisingly large crowds. Okonkwo's research papers began appearing in imperial journals. Rodriguez trained station security in what he called practical de-escalation techniques. And slowly, without really trying, humanity began to change how the station operated. Not through force or demands, but through simple competence and a willingness to help. Thelnvar watched it all and updated his reports regularly. The humans were an anomaly. They were primitive by imperial standards, but they operated like they belonged. They had no special technology, but they had something else, something the Empire had forgotten in its long ages of stability. They had hunger, not for conquest or domination, but for improvement, for progress, for doing things better than they were done yesterday. They are not apex predators, he wrote in his latest report. They are survivors, and survivors make the best allies because they never give up. This is worth remembering. The contested zone had been at war for 300 years. Not a hot war with constant fighting, but a cold standoff where two powerful factions faced each other across a buffer of neutral systems. The hierarchy, a militaristic coalition, claimed the territory by right of ancient conquest. The collective, a hive mind federation, claimed it by right of population majority. Neither side would back down. Neither side could win. When the Imperial Council asked humanity to mediate, Vasquez almost laughed. We've been part of Galactic Society for 6 months, she said to Thelnvar over the communication link. Why us? Because both sides have requested you, Thelnvar replied. The hierarchy respects your security officer's tactical knowledge. The collective is impressed by Dr. Okonkwo's research on competitive evolution. They believe you understand both sides. We don't know anything about their conflict. Exactly. You have no history with either faction. You are neutral by ignorance. Rather than by politics, it is the perfect qualification. Vasquez wanted to refuse, but she knew this was an opportunity. What are the terms? You will observe their defensive positions and offer suggestions. Nothing more. The Empire does not expect you to solve the conflict. merely to provide perspective. And, if our perspective makes things worse, then we will apologize and send you home, Thelnvar said. There might have been humor in his tone, but it was hard to tell. The Resilience jumped to the contested zone 3 days later, accompanied by an Imperial observer vessel. What they found was a military standoff frozen in time. The hierarchy had fortified positions on 12 planets, with massive defense platforms and fleets arranged in perfect geometric patterns. The collective had surrounded those positions with their own forces, equally well arranged and equally static. Both sides had been holding these exact positions for decades. "This is stupid," Chen said, reviewing the tactical displays. "Be more specific," Vasquez replied. "They're fighting like it's still ancient warfare. Everything is positioned according to some kind of honor code. Look at these formations. They're symmetrical. They're predictable. A child could exploit these gaps." Rodriguez was studying the same data. Neither side is actually trying to win. They're trying to fight properly. "There's a difference," Okonkwo nodded. "It's like watching ritualized combat in animals. They're following rules that stopped being about victory generations ago." Vasquez made a decision. "We're going to show them something different, but we need to be careful. We're not here to embarrass anyone." "Just to point out that they're both doing it wrong?" Chen asked. "Exactly. The hierarchy's military commander was a being named Korthax, who looked like a humanoid made of living stone. He received the humans in his command center with professional courtesy and obvious skepticism. "You are the humans who improved Station Nexus's engineering," he said. "What do you know of warfare?" "More than we'd like," Vasquez replied honestly. "May I ask why your forces are arranged in the Delta 7 defensive pattern?" Korthax seemed surprised she knew the name. "It is the traditional response to a siege formation. It has been used successfully for thousands of campaigns. It's also predictable," Rodriguez said. "The collective knows you'll use it because you always use it. They've had decades to figure out every weakness. You suggest we abandon proven strategies?" Korthax's tone was dangerous. "I suggest we show you an alternative," Vasquez said quickly. "Not for your main forces, but there's a small neutral colony in the zone, correct? 20,000 civilians who don't want to be part of this conflict? The colony on Refuge 4. Yes, both sides have agreed to leave it untouched. What if the collective decided to take it? Just hypothetically." Korthax stiffened. "We would defend it according to protocol. We would deploy 3 defensive squadrons in standard formation. And they would be destroyed," Rodriguez said flatly, "because the collective would know exactly where you'd position them. Instead, what if we showed you how we'd defend it? Not replacing your methods, just showing you an alternative." Korthax considered this. Finally, he nodded. "Very well. Show me." What the humans did next horrified every military observer watching. They took a small contingent of volunteers and deployed them around Refuge 4 in what appeared to be a completely random pattern. No formations, no standard positioning, no predictable responses. When the simulated attack came, orchestrated by the collective as a test, the human defensive strategy was chaos. Ships appeared from unexpected angles. Weapons fired from hidden positions. Decoys and false signals confused the attackers. The defending force was outnumbered 5-1, but they made the attackers pay for every meter. The simulation ended, with the attacking force withdrawing after sustaining heavy losses, their commanders unable to predict what the defenders would do next. Korthax stared at the results in silence. Finally he spoke. "This is not warfare. This is banditry." "This is asymmetric warfare," Rodriguez corrected. "When you're outgunned, you don't fight fair, you fight smart. There is no honor in ambush and deception. There's no honor in losing, either," Vasquez said. "We're not saying abandon your traditions, but sometimes survival is more important than tradition." The collective's response was similar when Okonkwo demonstrated how human psychological warfare could demoralize an enemy without firing a shot. Broadcasting information about casualties, questioning the purpose of the conflict, showing images of what was being lost. The collective's hive mind found the concepts disturbing but effective. You fight as if the rules do not apply. their representative said. The rules apply, Okonkwo replied. We just don't limit ourselves to them. The rules say you can't target civilians. Fine, we don't. But the rules don't say we can't make the enemy question why they're fighting. That's just psychology. Over the next 3 weeks, the humans worked with both sides, showing them techniques that the Galactic Empire had forgotten or never developed. Guerrilla tactics, psychological operations, asymmetric response strategies, information warfare. Their hierarchy and collective commanders were both fascinated and horrified. These methods were effective but felt wrong. They worked but violated the unspoken rules of how civilized warfare was conducted. Then something unexpected happened. A minor incident on one of the border worlds escalated. A hierarchy patrol encountered a collective scouting party. By all precedent, they should have engaged according to standard protocols. Instead, both sides hesitated. They had learned from the humans that following the expected pattern made them vulnerable. Neither side wanted to make the first predictable move. So, they didn't fight at all. They maneuvered, they watched. They waited for the other to show their hand. And when neither side did, they both withdrew. Thelenvar watched from the observer vessel and understood. The humans have not made them stronger. They have made them uncertain, and uncertainty is not compatible with indefinite warfare. He was right. Over the following weeks, smaller skirmishes occurred throughout the contested zone, but now both sides were fighting unpredictably, which meant both sides were taking heavier losses. The cost of the conflict was rising sharply. Within 2 months, both the hierarchy and the collective requested formal mediation, not because they wanted peace, but because they could no longer afford the war. Vasquez sat at the negotiating table between Korthax and the collective's primary consciousness node. She had expected this moment, but still wasn't entirely sure what to do. You have made war too expensive, Korthax said bluntly. This is your fault. You asked us to help, Vasquez replied. We did. Not our fault you didn't like the results. We cannot end this conflict, the collective said. Too much has been invested. Too much pride is at stake. Then don't end it, Vasquez suggested. Change it. Make it about something else. Explain, both sides said simultaneously. You're fighting over territory neither of you actually needs. You're fighting because you've been fighting for 300 years and don't know how to stop. So make it about something productive instead. She pulled up a star map. There are 17 unclaimed systems nearby, rich in resources but difficult to develop. Instead of fighting each other, compete to develop them. Whoever develops the most successful colonies wins the contested zone. That is not warfare, Korthax said. No, it's better. It's measurable. It has real stakes. And nobody dies. Vasquez leaned forward. You can still compete. You can still prove which side is superior, but you do it by building instead of destroying. Isn't that more valuable? The two sides looked at each other. The concept was strange, unsettling, but also interesting. The Empire would need to guarantee neutrality, the collective said. We will, Thelenvar said from his observation post. The Empire will oversee the competition and recognize the winner's claim. Korthax was quiet for a long time. Finally he nodded. This is acceptable. But know this, human. You have not brought peace. You have simply changed the nature of the conflict. Sometimes that's enough, Vasquez replied. The treaty was signed 3 days later. Both sides agreed to a 10-year competition to develop the neutral systems. The contested zone would remain neutral until the competition concluded. On the return journey to Nexus 7, Chen found Vasquez looking out at the stars. We didn't solve anything, he said. They're still competing, they're still trying to beat each other. True, Vasquez agreed, but now they're competing to build instead of destroy. That's progress. Is it? Or did we just postpone the inevitable? Maybe both. But we bought time, and time is the most valuable thing you can give people. Time to cool down, time to remember why they're fighting, time to decide if it's worth continuing. She turned from the viewport. We can't force them to make peace, but we can make war unprofitable and offer them alternatives. That's all anyone can do. Back on the observer vessel, Thelnvar compiled his report for the council. The humans resolved a 300-year conflict in 3 months. They did not do so through superior force or through diplomatic brilliance. They did so by making both sides uncomfortable with their own predictability. They introduced chaos into a stable system, and that chaos forced adaptation. He paused, considering his words carefully. The humans fight as if every rule is negotiable except victory. This makes them dangerous, but it also makes them effective. They do not accept that problems are unsolvable. They simply attack problems from unexpected directions until something breaks. This is not how civilized species operate, but civilization may sometimes benefit from a touch of barbarism. He closed the report with a recommendation. Grant humans full access to imperial space. They have proven themselves worthy not through technology or military might, but through sheer practical competence. They solve problems. In an empire this old, that is precisely what we need. The alert came while the Resilience was docked at Nexus 7. Every screen on the station turned red. Every communication channel carried the same emergency broadcast in thousands of languages. Thelnvar's message cut through all of them. All vessels, prepare for immediate evacuation. The Devourers have breached the border. Vasquez was on the bridge in seconds. Report. What are the Devourers? Chen pulled up files from the Imperial database, his face going pale. Oh no. Captain, they're bad. Really bad. Extragalactic force. The Empire has been holding them off for 50,000 years, but just barely. The tactical display showed the edge of Imperial space. A massive fleet was pushing through the defensive perimeter. Ships that looked organic rather than built, moving in swarm patterns that defied standard tactics. Behind them, sensors showed something larger. Much larger. How many? Vasquez asked. Thousands of ships, maybe tens of thousands. And that's just the vanguard. Chen looked at her. The Empire's been throwing everything at them for millennia. Massive defense platforms, huge fleets. They hold them at the border, but they never push them back. It's been a stalemate forever. Until now, Rodriguez said quietly. The communication panel lit up. Thelnvar's face appeared. Captain Vasquez, the Council requests your presence immediately. We have an emergency session. We're on our way. The Council chamber was in chaos when they arrived. Representatives from thousands of species were shouting in hundreds of languages. The translation systems were barely keeping up. At the center, the High Council looked more shaken than Vasquez had ever seen them. The liquid metal being that chaired the Council raised an appendage for silence. The situation is critical. The Devourers have deployed a new weapon. It is destroying our defensive platforms faster than we can reinforce them. At current rates, they will breach the border within 6 months. Then reinforce faster, someone shouted. We have been reinforcing for 50,000 years, the being replied. We maintain the largest military force in galactic history, but the Devourers are infinite. They consume galaxies. They have consumed galaxies. We have held them here only through overwhelming defense. If that defense fails, the chamber fell silent. Everyone understood what came next. Korthax stood from the gallery. Then we fight, we gather every fleet, we make our stand. We have done this countless times, the collective's representative said. It slows them, it does not stop them. The chair turned to Vasquez. Captain, you asked why we called you here. It is because you see problems differently than we do. You resolve conflicts we thought were frozen. You improve systems we thought were perfect. So I ask you now, how would humanity handle this situation? Vasquez felt every eye in the chamber turn to her. She looked at Chen and Rodriguez and Okonkwo. They looked as terrified as she felt. Show me your defense plans, she said finally. For the next 4 hours, Imperial military commanders walked the humans through 50,000 years of defensive strategy. Massive walls of ships, platforms with firepower that could destroy planets, formations that had been tested and refined over millennia. It was the most comprehensive military defense in the history of warfare, and it was completely wrong. You're fighting a war of attrition against an enemy that doesn't care about losses, Vasquez said finally. You're trying to outlast them. You can't. They're from another galaxy. They have more resources than you do. Then what do you suggest? Korthax demanded. Should we surrender? No, Rodriguez said. You change what you're fighting for. Right now you're fighting to stop them. Instead, fight to make them stop themselves. Explain, the liquid metal chair said. Okonkwo stepped forward. The Devourers are consuming galaxies. They're efficient. They calculate costs and benefits. They go after targets that give them resources. So we make ourselves too expensive, not with weapons, with unpredictability. Psychological warfare, Chen added, like we showed the hierarchy and collective. Make them uncertain. Make them question if we're worth the effort. You cannot negotiate with the Devourers, Thelanvar said. They are not rational. They are a force of nature. Everything is rational about resource allocation, Vasquez replied. Even forces of nature. Water flows downhill because it's easier. Lightning takes the path of least resistance. The Devourers consume because it's efficient. We make it inefficient. How? Multiple voices asked at once. Vasquez turned to the tactical display. First, we need to show them something they haven't seen before. Not a defense, an offense, but not with weapons. She looked at Okonkwo. You said they calculate costs. Let's give them data they can't calculate. Over the next 3 days, humanity prepared the strangest military operation in galactic history. It wasn't an attack. It wasn't even a defense. It was a broadcast. The Imperial Council authorized it because they had no better options. The humans had proven themselves unconventional but effective, and desperate times called for desperate measures. The Resilience jumped to the border with an escort of Imperial observers. The Devourer fleet was there, consuming a small planet that had been evacuated. Their organic ships pulsed with energy as they broke down matter into whatever they used for sustenance. Ready? Vasquez asked her crew. This is insane, Chen muttered. Most of our plans are, ready the broadcast. The Resilience powered up every transmitter it had. The Imperial observers added their own. Together they began broadcasting on every frequency the Devourers might receive. The broadcast was simple. It was humanity's history, not the proud moments, the ugly ones, wars that killed millions, genocides, nuclear weapons deployed against each other, bioweapons, planet-wide pollution, artificial intelligence gone rogue, plagues both natural and engineered, and through it all, humanity surviving. Every extinction-level event Earth had faced, every time humanity had nearly destroyed itself, every disaster overcome and lesson learned, often barely. And at the end of the broadcast, a message. This species has survived itself. It will survive. You. Probability of victory. Uncertain. Resource expenditure. Extreme. Risk assessment. Unfavorable. Then, images of human creativity. Art and music and literature. Mathematics and science. Concepts and ideas. Everything that made humanity more than just survivors. The final message was simple. Trade available, resources for resources, technology for technology, or war, your choice. But know this, we have survived everything. We will survive this too. The Devourer fleet stopped consuming the planet. On the Resilience, sensors detected massive amounts of data processing within the Devourer formation. They were analyzing, calculating. The broadcast had been designed to look like standard defensive propaganda, but the content was anything but standard. They're trying to decide if we're bluffing, Okonkwo said, watching the sensor readings. Are we? Rodriguez asked. No, Vasquez said quietly. Everything we told them is true. We really have survived all of that. We really are that stubborn, boys. Devourer fleet held position for 6 hours. Then they did something unprecedented. They responded. The message was complex, layered with mathematical proofs and resource calculations. The translation system struggled, but eventually produced an approximation. Species designation, human. Analysis, survival capability exceeds expected parameters. Resource consumption suggests efficiency. Query, trade terms. The council chamber erupted. In 50,000 years, the Devourers had never communicated. They had consumed or been repelled. They had never negotiated. They want to negotiate, Thelnvar said in disbelief. You made them uncertain enough that negotiation is more efficient than warfare. Vasquez looked at the council. They're not a force of nature. They're intelligent. They just operate on different logic than you do. They saw you as an obstacle to overcome. We showed them we might be more trouble than we're worth, and we offered an alternative that cost them less. What alternative? The liquid metal chair asked. Trade. They need resources. The Empire has resources. Instead of fighting over them, we sell them. They save energy. We avoid war. Everyone benefits. We cannot trust them, Korthak said. We don't have to trust them. We just have to be more useful as partners than as enemies. Vasquez pulled up the Devourer message. They're efficient. They calculate costs. Right now, fighting us costs more than trading with us. As long as that stays true, we have peace. The negotiations took 3 months. The humans mediated because both sides found them neutral. The Devourers respected their survival capability. The Empire respected their practical approach. The final treaty was simple. The Empire would provide raw resources to the Devourers at agreed rates. The Devourers would not cross the border. Trade stations would be established in neutral space. Both sides would maintain military readiness but avoid provocation. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't permanent. But it was better than 50,000 years of constant warfare. When the treaty was signed, the Council offered humanity full membership in the Galactic Empire. No probation, no restrictions, full voting rights and full access to all Imperial facilities. Vasquez stood before the Council and smiled. We accept. But Earth maintains its independence. We work with you, not for you. Partners, not subjects. The liquid metal chair flowed into what might have been a smile. Of course. We would expect nothing less from humans. After the ceremony, Thelnvar found Vasquez in one of the station's observation lounges. She was looking out at the stars, a glass of something alcoholic in her hand. You are thinking about your homeworld, he said. It wasn't a question. Yeah. We've been gone almost a year. They must think we're dead. You can return now. Your ship is repaired. The Council has lifted all restrictions. I know. She took a sip of her drink. But I'm not sure we should. Not yet. Why not? Because we're doing good here. We're making a difference. And Earth needs to know about all of this before we go back. She turned to Thelnvar. Can I ask you something? Why did you support us? From the beginning, you could have recommended we be quarantined or sent away. But you didn't. Thelnvar's crystalline features reflected the starlight. Because you reminded me of something the Empire had forgotten. We have been stable for so long that we mistook stability for perfection. We stopped questioning. We stopped adapting. We followed the old ways because they were safe, not because they were best. And we changed that. You challenged it. You showed us that problems we thought were unsolvable were simply problems we had stopped trying to solve. You showed us that confidence is not about never failing. It is about refusing to accept that failure is permanent. He paused. Your species has fallen many times, but you always stand back up. That is worth more than any technology. Vasquez raised her glass. To standing back up. To standing back up, Thelnvar agreed. The Resilience departed Nexus 7 3 days later, bound for Earth. The journey would take months, even with the repaired FTL drive. But they carried something more valuable than just their lives in their ship. They carried proof that humanity belonged among the stars, not because they were the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced, but because they refused to accept limits, because they solved problems instead of accepting them, because they stood tall, even when they had every reason to bow. On Earth, the return of the Resilience caused celebration and chaos in equal measure. The crew brought data and technology and stories of a vast galactic civilization. They brought trade agreements and diplomatic protocols. They brought proof that humanity was not alone. But most importantly, they brought a message. The galaxy was large and old, and full of species far more advanced than humanity. But humanity had something. Those species had forgotten. They had hunger, not for conquest, but for improvement, for progress, for proving that they could do the impossible. And in a galaxy that had been stable for 200,000 years, that hunger was exactly what was needed. Vasquez stood on Earth for the first time in over a year, breathing air that smelled like home. Around her, her crew was reuniting with families and friends. There would be debriefings and celebrations and countless questions to answer. But for now, she just stood and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Empire continued its ancient dance. The hierarchy and collective were competing to build new colonies. The Devourers were honoring their trade agreements, and humanity had a place among them all, not as subjects, not as primitives, but as equals who had earned their position through simple, stubborn competence. She smiled. They had stumbled into the galactic community by accident, but they had stood, tall like they had done it before, and that had made all the difference. Her communicator chimed. A message from Thelnvar. Captain Vasquez, the Council asks when humanity will send more representatives. There are many problems that could benefit from your unique perspective. Also, Engineer Chen's seminars are popular, and Dr. Okonkwo has offended 3 more research institutions. Your presence is requested. Vasquez laughed. Tell them we're just getting started. She looked up at the stars again. Humanity had a lot to learn from the galaxy, but the galaxy had things to learn from humanity too, and that exchange, that mutual growth, was what being part of a galactic civilization was really about. They had stood tall once. They would stand tall again, and again, and again, because that was what humans did. They fell down, got back up, and kept going. It was their gift, and it was their curse, and it was what would carry them to the stars.